one of us will have more interactions with people from very different cultural backgrounds. People from various ethnic groups are refusing to become part of a melting pot. They want to maintain their ethnic identity and are insisting that schools respect cultural differences. People in Hawaii are accustomed to cultural diversity on a daily basis, and the cross-cultural experiences that take place in our schools can in many ways be a model for the rest of the country. The rewards of intercultural communication are great. Dealing with differences can be stimulating and can cause expansions in people's thinking. However, there are misunderstandings that can arise when people from very different backgrounds are expected to interact in a cordial manner. High school students from Honolulu explore some of these difficulties in a video program that they have produced. We hope that their efforts will be helpful to teachers, administrators, and students who are interested in learning more about intercultural communication. The high school students who collaborated in making this video drew upon real-life situations they had either experienced or observed. Each dramatic sequence was followed by a panel discussion between students from various high schools in Honolulu. Scholars from the University of Hawaii and the East-West Center moderated the discussions. The first scene involves the trials and tribulations of a romance between Timo, a local boy, and Michelle, who had recently moved to Hawaii from the mainland. After a school assembly, Timo and Michelle went to congratulate Malia, one of Timo's old girlfriends, on her hula performance.
Get together, let's have a family picture. Come on, everybody get together. Why don't you take the picture of us? Okay. Smile now, everybody. Last night I met this guy, he was great, he has blonde hair and blue eyes, and I was only here for 2 weeks on vacation. How was it from? He's in California, he lives in Berkeley. He was such a good time together, and hopefully he asked me out for next weekend. Really? Yeah, that's going to be cool. So, everybody, Mrs. Timo? Yes. Well, I guess we're going to go now. Bye.
Just ask him, but somebody goes to the tree. Hey, stop. Oh, this is Michelle. So you're my friend?
Nice to meet you.
Oh,
Good afternoon, Sergeant, and beautiful day we're having.
Well, we can check you guys out later, then.
Bye, Michelle.
No beaches up mainland side.
Maybe especially the Harley.
But you think he's better off with Malia? Yeah.
We've been teaching them.
Oh, yeah. We've gone. Hey, what's up, sis?
Oh, how are you?
Where have you been?
No, just around.
Oh, wow. What are you doing around here?
I don't know, just want to tease me.
Oh, it's a long time no see.
I know. Well, you take care, okay? I gotta go.
Okay.
See you later. Bye.
Bye. Michelle, where are you going?
Do you have to kiss every girl that you see?
Did you wish I was a blue-eyed, blonde-haired stud?
Hello, I'm Sheldon Hoy. I'm from the Department of Ed Administration at the University of Hawaii. I've been working in this field with Dr. Richard Grislin, who's from the Eastwood Center and is from the discipline of cross-cultural psychology. And then we have with us today 4 students from a high school in Honolulu.
One of the most interesting aspects of incidents like this is that not only are clear behaviors involved, but there are interpretations of the behaviors that go on in people's minds. And these are the hardest to deal with because they're invisible. How do we know people's interpretations? Are they overblowing? Are they underinterpreting a certain scene? So I think that a lot of the perceived difficulties are based on people's interpretation, not necessarily just the behaviors themselves. Think back to the hula performance where people were giving Malia's lays after the assembly. Marcy, what do you think Timo was thinking, and what do you think Michelle was thinking?
I think Timo, his family thought was probably that it was his friend, and although the relationship no longer was there, he probably still felt that she was a close enough friend. And also the families were pretty close, so he still felt that he considered her a good enough friend that he should go and congratulate her. In Michelle's mind, she was probably thinking he didn't understand probably why he had to go and kiss her, because the kiss on the cheek may not be used on the mainland, and on the mainland maybe it's more of something just that would happen in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, whereas over here in Hawaii it's used for not only family but for friends.
Think ahead then to the time when people were mimicking Michelle's walk. Michelle discovered that people were mimicking her. What did Michelle think, and what were the people doing the mimicking thinking?
Well, I think Michelle felt she wasn't walking that way. She doesn't understand why the girls are mimicking her. And the girls are basically mimicking her because they see Holly as maybe being a little more pretty, more self-conscious about the way they look.
Well, I'm kind of curious about what you folks perceive to be happening when Timo took Michelle back to his basic group of friends, and what kinds of things were going through either your minds or people's minds as he brought her back to his group of friends?
I don't know, she probably was feeling uncomfortable, like Joe said. She's probably like, I mean, this is like a new and different experience for her, and I'm assuming that she just moved here from the mainland, and she doesn't know what to expect.
What do you think the group is thinking of her, Timo's group is thinking of her as she approaches them or as she is asked to interact with them?
They probably think of her as someone real different. They're more used to him probably going out with different girls. And because she's different and she is, she's Holly, they probably react to her in a different way, and they're just not used to it, maybe. I think that also the friends are like kind of scared that going out with this different person is going to change their friends. Like Timo's friends may think, well, if he goes out with Michelle, is he going to become Holly?
Of course, the tables were turned. There was a scene in which Michelle was with her group, and then Timo seemed to be a bit of an outsider in that one. Would you agree that the tables are turned? Now, in psychology, we call that in-group, out-group feeling. And people want to surround themselves with an in-group, people that are like themselves, have similar interests, people who look forward to being with each other, people who have a similar sense of humor, people who have lots of things that they can discuss, people can tell jokes to each other because they can get the references, they can get the point, lots of things that they share and do together, so there's always things to talk about. An out-group, on the other hand, are people you just keep at a distance. That they're okay, and sometimes you can even be polite to them, but there's a closeness that's not there.
A lot of local people have just generally, have a bad feeling sometimes towards Holly people. Like a lot of Holly people pick on them and they make fun of them. So when Timo, a popular guy, local friend, goes out with a Holly girl, he's going to take a lot of lessons from his friends and people giving him hassles. But he's got to expect that because that's really two different things, especially here.
Would you agree that there's a special consideration consideration when there are skin color differences, because I've been in a lot of high schools, Dr. Barnes been in a lot of high schools, and in every high school in America there are splits, there are groups, there are people that stay around with each other, shoving in the hall because someone dropped a football in the big game, or someone was dancing too close to someone else's girl, someone had the good answer in class, or someone else cut him off. And so there are all these reasons why there might be a bit of a tip, but you add in skin color, things become more intensified. And all of the thinking, all the interpretation, it seems to me, immediately goes to skin color, without these other considerations that are the everyday human problems that are shared by everybody. You add skin color onto that, and you're entering a different world almost, a different set of interpretations. Would you agree?
Most people group together by interest, but if certain people with the same interest have the same skin color, that's when you get into like racial stereotypes. If you start saying, well, all black people play football, if there's a whole bunch of black people that play football.
It varies. There are a lot of groups where you might have a group with all Japanese people, and you might have a group with all Hawaii people, and you might have a group with maybe all Hawaiian people, and then you have groups that are just mixed. Like the group that I hang around with, you know, we have 2 or 3 white people, 2 black people, 2 Japanese people, 1 Filipino girl, and I think that's about it. But it's like Jenny said, it's all a matter of interest, really. If the skin color isn't so much what matters in our group, if we all have interest in the same thing.
Does a relationship between Timo and Michelle, or obviously what they represent, or relationships in Hawaii in general, does a relationship have a chance?
Yeah, I think so. I've gone with Holly Rose before. You're going to run into problems, but then the relationship is good, and it's there, and it can work out.
I think I agree with Joe that it'll work out. I think that once they get used to each other and the way that each other act, and the longer that Michelle is here, she'll be able to understand more of what Timo's, his attitude and the way he does things. And she'll be able to accept those things a little bit more. I think that the reason why there are conflicts is because she doesn't understand.
In any relationship, like Timo and Michelle, people come to understand each other and to know about each other's background. An additional aspect that people often have to understand about each other in Hawaii is they come from very different cultural backgrounds, and that might not be a case if they were on the mainland in Ohio, and very homogeneous neighborhood where people pretty much have the same background. For instance, Timo may have a long-term relationship with Malia through Malia's family, and those families may have known each other for generations and generations. And it's very, very important for Timo to have that very positive relationship with Malia. And it might be the same with the young lady in the last scene, where there was a nice kiss in the parking lot. It does not have a sexual connotation necessarily. And again, Timo may have had a long-term relationship with that person's family. It's what we call a group identity, a long-term group identity, where it's very valued that you have a group almost surrounding you. This can be in real contrast to people like Michelle, or like myself, I might say, who were raised in a very individualistic environment, where we were taught to be self-sufficient and on our own and always be able to do things ourselves. We certainly had friends and family, but in all honesty, we're so lucky to have a nice, comfortable relationship with them, with just a little bit of distance, so that we can pick up and get on a plane and move someplace else and change jobs and so forth.
Yeah, don't worry. Hey. I feel like slamming your head. Hey, yeah. Hey. Look, you see him? Get him, bro. Get him.
Yours, Johnny, yours! Take his ball, right down! Go!
The fight you just saw took place between a group of incoming military students and some local boys. Fights like these occur when misunderstandings have been allowed to build up over a long period of time.
Since you bad, what you been say, huh? Huh? Yeah, come on. Yeah, he better not say anything, Boo.
Yeah, he better not say.
See you boys in school, bro. Yeah. Come on, let's go, Zippies. Let's go.
Students found hanging out in the F building during recess and lunch are going to be assigned detention. Okay, and there's one more piece of bad news. All homecoming festivities have been canceled due to financial problems.
At my old school, homecoming was dead, and it was never canceled. Yeah. Let's get
Okay, student council is going to be holding a dance next month for about $7 a person.
Major withdrawal. Back at my old school, dances were free, and it was good fun. Yeah. Good thing. If your other school is so good, Harry boy, why don't you go back there then? What is that stuff?
Taxi, you like?
Nah, let's go.
Hey, what? Now turn up for your Harry boy.
Hey, brother, what's going on? I'm hauling you guys from the beach and this right here. Yeah. Getting all wise with him and his boys, huh? Yeah. Let's go take them down. Okay, let's go.
It seems to me that there are a lot of military kids in Hawaii who have a lot of local friends and feel that there's not very much prejudice, or noticeably less prejudice than other places that they've lived. And there are other military kids, visibly no different. I can't tell the difference just from looking at them. But they don't have very many local friends. And they feel that there's a great deal of prejudice in Hawaii, and all this aloha spirit is a lot of nonsense, and that they feel that there's a lot more prejudice than other places that they live in. What do you think?
Well, when I first moved here, I came from Virginia. And where I came from, people dressed really nicely. And so when I moved here, I kind of felt dressed the way I did in Virginia. And a lot of the locals, they just automatically called you a snob. They didn't want to get to know you. I had one girl follow me around, wanting to beat me up or something because of the way I dressed.
One of my recommendations is that people always think through possible reasons for these incidents. Many possible reasons, not just the first that comes to mind. Now, in the script that we saw, there was a bumping in the hall. Have you experienced this? What do you think was going on in the minds of the people in the bumping incident?
At our school, we have like a football hall, and all the football players stand there, or all the Samoa and our local guys stand there. And when you're new and you walk around that hall, they think you like throw rocks at you or they hit you. And then you turn around and see what it was, and they say, what, you know. I think they do it not because you're you, because you're Howley and you're not like that, and you're different, and they want to see can you fit in. Or they bump you on purpose to see what you'll do.
I've been on both sides. Because I'm local myself, and yet I'm military. I've been to school in mainland where they will bump me in the hall, because I'm not white or anything like that. But when I got here, I've been here so many times, back and forth. And each time it's the same thing. Like they said, they get bumped in the hall, and my friends, since I look local, and they're like, why don't you bump? Why should I bump you? They didn't do nothing to me. I'm friends with everybody here and at school, and if they expect me to do that, I won't, because I don't have that feeling that they have to bump that person. Because I've been bumped before, and I don't like it.
There were two other incidents in the script. One was the Holly didn't like the craft seed, and in another incident he criticized the arrangements for the dance. Now, are these seen as put downs by the locals? Attempts by Holly to criticize and to put people down?
I
think the criticized, they just have to say they're different from what they're used to. They're used to a certain way, and then they come here. I've never seen cracked food before when I came here. I thought it was gross. I tried it and I spit it out. I was disgusted, but I wasn't meaning to insult them. I was just saying, I don't like that at all.
Could it have been interpreted, isn't it?
Yeah. They could say, hey, you don't like my kind of food, what's wrong with you?
People have a need to belong. There may be a few hermits someplace in some cave that are very happy to be alone, but 99 and 100% of people need to have others around them and need to have friends and need to have support. One difficulty military kids have is that they may have been getting along very well at their old high school, and they still might have an emotional bond with their old high school. And so when they discuss the dance policy, and seems to be a put down at the local school, it really might be more of an emotional link with the old school. Can anyone relate to that?
I think it depends on the different people they get involved with and the different activities they get involved with. Like if you join sports or clubs or things that everybody's involved with, you get to know everybody and you accept each other. But then if you just don't do anything like a lot of kids do, you just don't get involved in anything, they don't get to know different people and they think they have something against them. If they don't come up to them and say, hi, I want to be your friend. They have to go out themselves too.
The final scene depicts the hardships of being a newcomer to Hawaii when you've recently moved from another country.
Okay, class, this is the last day you can turn in your commission slips and your money if we're going to the excursion to the Visit Museum. So let's have your papers, okay? You've been talking about this for 2 weeks. Every day. Here we go. All right. So long. Okay, I more or less have one from everybody, except that it's very good, Billy.
Oh, I forgot again. I've never been on a field trip before. You don't have them in the Philippines.
How many times have I reminded you about this, Billy?
The very least she could do is look me in the eye when I'm talking to her.
All right, so that's everything. Everybody is going, everybody is listening.
Oh, my managing assignment permission to William Mr. Miller. So I can't go on the field trip.
You forgot
I'll be going. We'll go right in front of his car. And then we'll just have my mom find me in his car. So we can go there. How are you going? We're going by his car. Good. Good. Downstairs. So you mind if I study with you guys? Yeah, put me on your side with you guys. Stop it. You didn't get started in the car. Really, I didn't want to go on that field trip anyway.
Me either. I don't want to go anyway. I'm saying,
Nini, do you want to meet us at the cafeteria? Sure. Okay. Oh, you guys, we better study for Mr. Miller's test.
Have any of you ever had an experience similar to what we just saw in the tape of having given up some kinds of school activities, such as a field trip or anything like that, because of the way you felt about what was happening?
Yeah. I was put on out in the 4th grade, and I already paid for a ticket, but I backed out the last minute because I felt like out of place. And school trips, it's still out of place because everybody's bringing sandwich and chicken and meat like that, and you bring rice. But the hardest problem is like you feel ashamed and you feel like the Americans are more higher level, you know, they're more rich and like even though I wear shorts and they wear shorts, but you feel like the way they wear is more rich, you know. Your short is much more cheaper, and when you get free lunch, you kind of feel ashamed that like in Vietnam you don't have to get free lunch, you bring your own lunch, and when you first get free lunch, you feel ashamed to show them your tokens.
I guess I'm curious. As we've talked here, I've heard you folks say that there were different. The schools are different, and the learning is different. And I'm wondering, in what ways did the other kids act differently in school than you were accustomed to?
Well, they're just different from us.
Oh, okay.
Like, we wear pants and they wear skirt, you know. In our country, we didn't wear skirt like that.
What suggestions would you have for either teachers or administrators concerning what they could do during that 2 or 3 years to make things easier for you to learn?
Well, that program is not too good because then you'll be placing all, you know, the same language kind of people in the same class, and you know, when you speak in class, you speak their own language, so they're not learning too fast.
Do you think it's better to not be grouped with people of the same language?
Yeah, like, you know, you place them in the class with regular people, but you give them more attention, you know.
Do you have any suggestions as to how we that work in the schools could make that adjustment easier for you?
Interact groups, like, more easy, like, you can get a regular English class and have maybe a group project usually concerning this.
So working in groups with people not necessarily from your same language group.
Well, I'd like to thank each of you for discussing with us today. I think you've given us all some things to think of from your point of view, and you've given us good suggestions that we can consider as to how to make that transition experience a little easier, and that's what we're hoping to do. That's the purpose of our being together. Thank you.